Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie and I'm a registered dietitian and sport nutritionist. And if you're new here, this channel is all about sport nutrition and how we can help you fuel your sport better. So we're happy to have you here and I hope you enjoy this video. Today we're going to be talking about what our nutrition plan needs to look like when we have an injury. When we're an athlete, unfortunately, injury is a part of the job description sometimes, and what we want to do with our nutrition is to make sure or maximize what we're doing with our nutrition plan to make sure that we are maintaining as much of that lean mass as possible while we're off on injury. If our goal is to maintain our body composition while we're off on injuries such as a stress fracture or a full fracture, some sort of ACL repair or injury to any sort of ligaments, we want to make sure that we're doing two things with our diet. The two main areas of nutrition that I want to cover today are first, your energy intake, and second is your protein intake. So, starting with energy, a lot of times when people have an injury and they're off their training and they aren't moving as much as they were before, they tend to cut back their energy intake and don't eat as much because they aren't training, which theoretically should make sense. However, when we have an injury, our body actually needs more energy as its resting energy expenditure, or what it needs to kind of heal that injury. For example, if you have a fracture, your resting energy expenditure might go up by 120%. So therefore, we don't want to be super quick to cut in calories. Not only does your resting energy expenditure increase, but also if you're using crutches to mobilize, this also increases your energy expenditure by 2 to 3 times, which is definitely significant. When we talk about energy, we often term it in a positive energy balance or a negative energy balance or in the neutral. So when we talk about a positive energy balance, this means that your energy intake through the food that you eat is more than your body requires in terms of energy expenditure. If you're in a negative energy balance, this means that you're not eating enough to meet your body's needs or your energy expenditures. And if you're in a neutral, then you are closely matching your energy intake to your energy expenditure. If we're in a negative energy balance, this is actually going to impair your body's ability to heal that injury site, and it also is going to accelerate your muscle mass loss. Research right now shows that if you're in a negative energy balance, you reduce your muscle protein synthesis or your building up of your muscle mass and proteins by about 20 to 30%, which is definitely significant if we are trying to maintain our muscle mass while we're inactive. In research looking at the ACL injuries in elite athletes when they're off on recovery, a neutral or a slight positive energy balance is definitely favorable and the most important key factor to maintaining a leaner body composition and maintaining that muscle mass during that immobilization or that recovery phase. So let's get into the protein piece now. We often look at the relationship between muscle protein synthesis, which is the build-up of muscle, and the muscle protein breakdown, which is obviously the breakdown of muscle. If we have more muscle protein synthesis versus muscle protein breakdown, we have a net gain of muscle mass. If we have more protein breakdown and less muscle protein synthesis, we're going to be losing muscle. In the first 10 days of immobilization or not utilizing that specific limb that's injured, we see that not only does muscle protein breakdown increase because we want to be repairing and breaking down that damaged site so we can rebuild it, but also we see that we have anabolic resistance where we see that muscle protein synthesis also decreases. So we have a really big gap, and definitely in the first 10 days is where we see the most muscle mass loss. After that 10 days, we see the muscle protein breakdown decrease, but we don't see that muscle protein synthesis increase, and we still have more net breakdown than we do building up. Therefore, we're still likely to be losing some muscle after that 10-day period. However, we can definitely do as much as we can with a diet to help with that. Another diet strategy is going to be making sure that we have enough protein spread out throughout the day so that we are maxing out as much as we can that muscle protein synthesis. Research right now is showing that anywhere from 2.2 to 2.5, maybe even 3 grams per kilo is where we want to be aiming for in terms of our total protein intake. When you're consuming your protein, you want to be spreading it out multiple times throughout the day so that we can continue to stimulate that muscle to maintain itself as much as possible. We also recommend to have high biological value proteins, which means that the proteins that we have in our diet are going to be providing us with all the amino acids that our body requires to build and maintain muscle mass. And also it looks at how quickly our body digests and how quickly those amino acids get from our intestines into our system to make sure that we're flooding our muscles with a good amount of amino acids to help stimulate that muscle protein synthesis as best as possible. This does mean that more of the meat-based products, dairy products, are going to be possibly a little bit better in terms of maintaining that muscle mass over your injury versus those plant-based sources. However, if you are a vegan or vegetarian athlete, not to worry. If you are still having a good amount of protein spread out throughout the day, this should be helpful in terms of making sure that you're maintaining your muscle mass as well. We also want to be making sure that we have high leucine types of foods in our diet. Leucine is a branched chain amino acid which is found in our foods that we eat, which is a potent stimulator of the muscle protein synthesis, and having good doses of that throughout the day is going to be helpful to maintain our muscle mass. Because our diet is very high in protein already, we don't necessarily need to have a leucine specific supplement or a branched chain amino acid or a BCAA that we're including in our diet because we're already flooding the system with enough leucine and branched chain amino acids and the other amino acids that we need to maintain our muscle mass, so we don't need to do any of these supplements. Really great sources of leucine would include chicken, fish, tofu, or even your protein powders will have leucine in them if it's a whey powder. So including these consistently throughout the day, again in 4 to 5 doses, is going to be adequate enough to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to stimulate the muscle to grow. There's so much more that we could talk about in terms of how we can make sure that you're healing well during your injury, but that's all the time we have for today, and I thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, comment below, send me an email, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!